In 2005, actually November, yeah, it was November 2005, I was signed off from work with stress. I don't know, can't remember what the sick note said, but probably more true than calling it stress. I was 25. It was my inner perfectionist, my inner people pleaser, so much pressure from self that had put me in a terrible place emotionally, mentally. And I want to talk about it, not to tell you the whole story, although I'm really happy to tell you the whole story, but more because I keep hearing people, both that I'm coaching, people that I know through the grapevine, I keep hearing about people being totally overworked and exhausted and pushing on the edge. I hear the tension and the stress and the emotion in their voice. And I also feel that there's still loads of taboo around going off from work with stress or whatever's going on. There's loads of taboo and loads of stuff that's tricky to talk about. And so for me, it's been a long time and I'm in a really good place. I mean, it turned out to be one of the best things that happened to me, but I wouldn't wish it upon you. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone to have to go through what I went through. And I learned a lot. And I could probably make a list of 100 things I learned, but I chunked it down to 5 things that I'd like to share with you that I think is helpful for you if you maybe you're in that period right now, maybe you're on the verge of it, maybe you've been through it in the past, or maybe you're leading a team with people or you have people in your family that it feels like they're on the verge of being pushed too far. Really think this is important. So I made notes because I think otherwise I'm going to get into the emotion of it and forget to tell you everything I want to share. One of the things that people do when they're at the verge of going off with stress, emotionally cracking, burning out, whatever you want to call it. And when they're in that period and even afterwards, they ask themselves, why? What was the thing? And other people want to know, what was it? As if there's one logical thing that was the thing. It's never just one thing. For me, it was many different things. And one of the reasons why I think it's up and intense at the moment is the way I see this whole COVID period, the pandemic. It's been like a pressure cooker that has intensified everything. And so I would say with 95% of my clients, every bad habit they had before the pandemic has gotten worse in this period. So any bad habit you have, when you put it in a pressure cooker, it gets more intense. And so first thing I want you to know is it's never just one thing. So there might be something that suddenly, then it's too much. I remember the Thursday evening when I phoned my friend, and thankfully I had a coach friend. I was really lucky. And I was alone in the building, in the job I was working at, because I was working US hours because I was on a project that I didn't want to be on, but my no wasn't welcome. And so I was on this project. And I remember phoning my friend, crying. And she said, get up from that chair, move to another chair. And I did that. And she said, tomorrow you're going to go to the doctor and you're going to get signed off. And I was like, but I can't. I have this, I need to do stuff. I have stuff I need to do. And she was like, yes, you can. And yes, you will. I was signed up for 2 weeks, which, by the way, was not long enough, obviously, but I'll come to that in a moment. The first thing I want you to know, and the first point, the first really important learning is it's never one thing. And so it's a slippery slope that leads you there. And one of the really important things, if you think that you're in a state of overwhelm, is to line up support. And it's not going to be one source of support, as much support as you can. You definitely want to line up personal support. You probably also want to line up some professional support. You want to find different ways of processing it, and it might be partly talking about it. It might be physically releasing it, for example, through massages or acupuncture or whatever works for you. But you definitely want to line up support. And I want you you to remember that even though you think you cannot stop right now, no one benefits when you burn out. I was lucky at the time. I was just me. I didn't have any children, didn't have any dependents, but no one benefits, and your employer will not benefit from it. So as much as it feels tricky to say no and to say stop, trust me, if you don't say it, things will just keep coming at you, and it's better you say it before you totally crash. How do you crash? It's a lot to catch up from there, that place. So, look after yourself. So number one, it's never just one thing. Okay, number two, and I'm going to now open my list again and see what I had as number two. Yeah, number two is the hardest bit is actually coming back to work. So I thought the hardest thing was to get signed off sick, but actually the hardest thing is coming back, because the shame and the stigma and the, people like, should we talk to her? Should we not? What's going on? What do you say? I came back after 2 weeks. As I said, that wasn't long enough. And I was adamant I needed to go back. I needed to deliver a conference. I needed to make things happen. And I did it, but I was still massively struggling. I had started a variety of things, among others, therapy before the period happened, during and after. And in the end, what happened is I did another few months in that job and I resigned, thought I had something else lined up. That didn't happen, and it was a blessing, because I had a period where I had very little pressure and very little I had to do. It takes time to heal, and it's inconvenient. It really takes time. And so this is why, if you can catch it without having to go totally off sick leave, I think it's easier, because it's not easy to go off, because the bit that's the hardest coming back. And so the support around coming back and how do you stay involved, and often if it's gotten so bad, it can be really tricky to find your place in that organization again. So get support around that. Speak to others who have been through it, and preferably catch it before it gets to that point. Number three is, as much as I wouldn't want it on you, I have to say there were so many gifts in my period of being off sick and of this period of mentally, emotionally crashing. I think I'm still learning from that period, as most things in our life, the bits that are really tricky and tough are ones that we learn the most from, if you are willing to go there. And that's the piece. If you're just going to be ashamed about it, or feel there's something wrong with you, that's not the case. And actually, that's a piece I forgot in number one. It's never just one thing. And what you really want to know is there something wrong with me? No, there is nothing wrong with you. For whatever reason, right now, different things have, pushed you into a place where emotionally and mentally you are not in your strongest happy place, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. And there are tremendous gifts about what's not right for you. Where have you overridden no? Where have you totally overridden your bodily signals, your mental signals, your intuitive signals that said stop, enough, or too much, or I don't agree with that? That's just out of integrity for me. Something's out of alignment. Something is not right. And you need to go back and check which pieces are those. So there's gifts, there's learnings, there's tremendous growth. And it might be the best thing that ever happened to you. It definitely was to me. And I still wouldn't wish it on you. Number four, one of the things that's really tricky if you're going through a period like that, I think even if you're not signed off sick, but you're just going through a shitty period with work in your business, you're just like, it's so annoying when you meet people, particularly people you don't know well or you haven't met before, and they say, so what do you do? Or how's work? And you're like, you just don't want to talk about it. So with people close to you, tell them what is helpful to ask you. Do you want to be asked anything? What do you want to talk about, and what do you not want to talk about? Because it's helpful and important to keep connecting in with other humans and not to totally isolate yourself in that period. I really want you to connect with other people. But with people that you speak to regularly, tell them what are you okay to talk about and what not. What are kind of questions that feel good for you? Like, maybe you just talk about what shows you're watching on Netflix, right? Like, you can still have dialogue, but maybe you don't want to go to those hard places. Choose carefully and consciously who you do go to the tricky places with. but also educate people around you about what are questions that are helpful for you to be asked. You will know which questions feel good and which questions don't. And so help other people because they're awkward and they might avoid you or might not know what to say to you. And so just telling them, here are the kind of questions that are helpful right now. Well, here's what I'm up for talking about. That will help them, but it will also help you. And those connections and those relationships are part of what makes you stronger going forward. Which brings me to number 5. So as I said, like underneath it all, there's a question of, uh-oh, so is there something wrong with me? Am I just not tough enough, good enough? And I remember when I started getting more and more busy again in different parts of my life, I was like, is this going to happen again? And I want you to know that even if you do have a prolonged period where you're off with stress, and even if you have a prolonged period where you mentally and emotionally are not in the right place, you can absolutely still come back and have periods of full on intensity. You can strive, you can create extraordinary results, you can excel, you can do amazing things. All you do desire can still come true. It's not that there was something wrong with you. It's just that things weren't in integrity, that you hadn't looked after yourself, that you just used yourself and maybe put yourself in a self-induced labor camp. Maybe you put too much pressure on yourself. And I think, speaking as a recovering perfectionist, recovering people pleaser, really watching what's the inner dialogue you have, and retraining that is not a quick thing. It's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that happens, I had 2 weeks off. It's not something that happens 2 weeks. It's not something that happens in 2 months or 6 months. It's ongoing, and it's worth it, and it's amazing. And so really, if you're seeing someone, if you've had someone in your team before and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can ever load pressure on them again, or if they're up to it, hey, they want to be up for it, unless they're totally out of integrity and then the wrong role. But they are up for it. And it's just a matter of when. And you can totally achieve massive things. I really think we've got to get away from the taboo. We break legs, we break limbs, and internally, we put so much pressure on ourselves, and we can be incredibly self-critical. And at the same time, just now we're taking breaks. I mean, the amount of clients I have that forget to go to the loo, that don't leave their house or their office when it's daytime and never go breathe the fresh air while it's actually light, right? That don't take a proper lunch break. If you don't look after yourself, no wonder, right? Like something's got to give at a certain point. You keep piling on the pressure. Treat yourself like you are the talent. Treat yourself like you are a valuable asset. When you treat yourself like you are a valuable asset, everything changes. And let's talk about the difficult times. If you've been off with stress or on sick leave, and if you're ready to talk about it, totally okay if you're not. But if you're ready to talk about it, maybe comment, maybe share. Because the more we talk about it, the easier it will be for those that are sort of on that slippery slope or just returning from work to kind of reach out and have the conversations that are required. And let's normalize it. It's not weird. Nothing's wrong with you. It's not fun. It's not easy. And you can absolutely come back much stronger from this. Final thing to say, which is not really about going off with stress, but just if you are overwhelmed and if you do absolutely care about your work, your leadership, your business, if you care about treating yourself like the talent, treating yourself like a valuable asset, I'd really love you to come join the Leadership Hour. It's a new membership. You get founders rate right now, nominatan.com/leadership hour. There's 60 minutes live tomorrow, Friday the 12th of November, where I will guide you through the kind of questions that you've got to ask yourself, that when you do, you will catch whatever is going on and you will come out better, clearer, productive with the right things, bigger results, feeling better. Seriously, nominatan.com/leadership hour. The price is a no-brainer. Just come join us. And of course, as I always say, now is a great time to breathe. Have a great day.